Hi. Before I forget, I want to thank Astro-Tech for sending out this beautiful telescope for me to review for the purposes of this video. Now we can move on to the video.
Hey everyone, Angus Wong here. If you're watching this video, you either have an interest in astrophotography or you are already doing astrophotography, and by now I am sure that you are fully aware of how expensive and how quickly it becomes expensive when you're doing this hobby. And I'm here to tell you that, I can't think of another joy than to use equipment that are relatively affordable, but it punches way above its price point. And I have such an example here for you right now. This is the Astro-Tech AT102EDL. And in this video, I'm going to share my experiences with this with you guys and just show you how you don't need to spend a whole lot of money to have a fantastic optical instrument. Now, if you've watched any of my reviews in the past, you know that I don't dwell on the spec sheets. I find it to be pointless for me to talk about something that you guys can easily look up on the internet or anywhere else. So instead, what I'm going to do, I'm going to quickly glance over the specs just to say that I've talked about it, and then focus more on my user experience and maybe point out one or two things that are either unique or uncommon or something that I find weird with the equipment. And there are a few things about this telescope that I want to point out later on. But let's just quickly go over the specs just to get that out of the way. So this is, as the name suggests, AT102. So therefore, this is a 102 millimeter, and it comes in with a focal ratio of f7. Now, this is a doublet, not a triplet, and I'm going to tell you right now, just because this isn't a doublet, you guys should not overlook it because it's a fantastic equipment. And this thing weighs in at about 9.5 pounds, but given its size, it feels a lot lighter than 9.5 pounds. It is a little bit front heavy. Well, it's actually very front heavy. But for a 100 millimeter refractor coming in under 10 pounds and it actually feels and operates less than 10 pounds, this is pretty awesome. Okay, now I want to talk about a few things that are actually unique to this telescope, and honestly, probably something that you wouldn't be able to find in this price range. Oh, before I forget, at the time of the recording, we're now in early April, probably first week of April. You can find this for $1,200 US. And remember, this is a doublet for $1,200 US. And what makes this telescope unique in this price range is that, number one, it features the FCD 100 glass. Now, this is a type of glass that is produced by Hoya out in Japan. And to be honest with you, I'm not an expert in optical glass, but this is the FCD 100 is essentially equivalent to FPL 53. So you're getting good glass in here. And on top of that, the glass is coated with lanthanum oxide, and what that lanthanum does is essentially increase the refraction index. Now, once again, I'm not an expert in glass performance. All I know is that with FCD 100 and lanthanum oxide included, you're going to get very, very little chromatic aberration, if any. And on top of that, astronomics basically promises that each of these telescopes would be inspected to achieve at minimum 0.95 Stroll ratio. Now, the theoretical perfection is obviously 1.0. So for this to achieve 0.95 is pretty exceptional. And what the Stroll ratio is telling you is basically its optical performance going through. I need to think about this. Okay, so to keep this short, the Stroll ratio is a measurement of astronomical seeing through turbulent atmosphere. And like I said, a theoretical 1.0 is absolute perfection, and this achieves 0.5 at minimum from factory. So combine that with the FCD 100 and the lanthanum oxide glass, you got some good glass in here. And when you do everything right, you should get a pretty decent image. Now, there are a few things that I want to point out that I find to be weird with this telescope. For some reason, Astro-Tech decided to ship the telescope with this handlebar. It would go on here, but obviously I took it off. And I took it off because either I don't know how to figure out how to attach a guide scope onto this, or it's not served as a guide scope saddle. It only serves as a handlebar. And I don't know why they did that. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So instead, I use my own William Optics handlebar / guide scope saddle. And I wish that they included a graduated image rotator. Now this has an image rotator. It's just not marked or anything like that. Yeah, I wish that it was in there, but I can understand that they have to meet a price point, especially considering the type of glasses that they have in here and the performance that you're getting out of it. So I get it, but I wish it had a graduated image rotator. And yeah, there's not much else I want to talk about other than take it outside and set it up. Now, obviously, this is just a preliminary balance because I'm going to check again. I'm going to check my balance again once I have all my wiring hooked up. But I think I'm in a pretty good ballpark right now. So, word of advice, make sure you finalize your balancing with all your wires hooked up. Not just mounting your telescoping camera, because when you have all your wires attached, it's going to create some sort of a drag. So just make sure that you do one final check when you hooked up all your wires.
Oh, and also make sure when you're balancing, you take off your lens caps for both your main telescope and your guide scope. And then when you're done, make sure you put it back on as well. I almost forgot. So I guess this is a good time to talk about why this Astro-Tech AT102EDL, remember the L stands for lanthanum, why this telescope makes sense in your collection. So I usually don't focus too much on the speed of the optics because, well, if it's a faster telescope, then I can use shorter exposure time. If it's a slower telescope, then I can use longer exposure time. Either way, these are things that are within my control when I set up for the session. What I cannot control, however, is the focal length or the amount of zoom that I get with my telescope. And this refractor comes in at 711 millimeters of focal length, and this is actually quite a sweet spot to have in your astrophotography library. And I say that because we just wrapped up the winter season with all of its beautiful and massive nebulae. And with 700 millimeters of focal length, you can get, pretty zoomed in on a lot of the nebulae, especially during the winter and the upcoming summer seasons. However, now that we're in spring, we're mostly talking about galaxies. Now, galaxies they're really small in the night sky, even though they're massive objects. And the reason for that is because, well, they're really far away. Anytime that we're taking images of a galaxy, we're talking about millions of light years away versus our nebulae in the night sky, which most, if not all of them, are within our own galaxies. And most of them are, 10,000 light years away, 1,000 light years away. They're much closer to us. That's why they appear to be much larger. So with galaxies, because they're so much further away, they're really tiny in the night sky. And believe it or not, at about 700 millimeters, and this comes in at 711 millimeters, you can begin to start to appreciate those small galaxies. Now, this is not going to be enough to capture all of the galaxies because they're really, really tiny. But at 711 millimeters focal length, not only are you going to have great views of a lot of the nebulae during the winter and summer season, but this gives you a taste of what you can do during the galaxy season. And hopefully, if the night stays clear tonight, I can show you, well, I haven't figured out what galaxies I want to image yet. But I hope I can show you a picture of a galaxy by the time this video is done. Another thing I want to bring up is I mentioned the focal length, right? Well, also because of how light this feels in your hand, I'm all about versatility, and the best equipment that you use is the one that you want to use all the time. And so this is so light to carry around, to set up, that it really doesn't feel like 100 millimeters of glass and 100 millimeters of instrument. Quite honestly, this, in my hands at least, this handles more like an 80 millimeter refractor. And like I said, I'm all about versatility. So this is light and easy to handle. This is going to be great for the winter and summer objects. And this will give you a glimpse of what you can expect from the galaxy season. So, to have an instrument that is well priced and perform exceptionally well, and to be able to use it year round, I think this is pretty awesome. And remember, this is light enough to go on virtually most equatorial mount. So yeah, I'm going to really like using this telescope. Okay, so for tonight's session with the Astro-Tech AT102EDL, I've decided that I'm going to choose Leo's triplet because if my guess is correct, tonight or maybe this weekend is probably one of the last times that I can actually image Leo's triplet, because, well, right now I'm dealing with about 50% full moon, and it's only going to get worse. So tonight is always going to be better than tomorrow. And on top of that, between my neighbor's rooftop, I'm probably going to run out of sky for Leo's triplet by the time the next new moon phase begin. So I think, because I'm about to run out of sky for my target, I'm going to go with Leo's triplet. And I hope that, you know, when you guys are planning your sessions and planning which target you want to image, that's how you sort of plan ahead. Like, you give priorities to the target that you think will soon disappear from your location because of trees, rooftop, or, you know, the status of the moon. So I'm gonna get the session going, and then I'll check back with you later on to give you sort of a summary of what I think of the telescope. Oh, before I forget, I'm also going to try to do a test for the chromatic aberration, if there are any, with the telescope, by picking a bright star. I don't know which one. I don't know which star I'm going to pick yet, but by picking a bright star, and I'm going to image without the filter, and I'm going to show you the unedited picture. Well, I'm not going to show you. Future me is going to show you. 5, 4. Hey y'all, future me here, and I want to take a quick moment to just talk about if there are any chromatic aberration with this doublet AT102EDL with the FCD 100 glass and lanthanum coating. Well, before I go into that, I want to show you what chromatic aberration looks like. What you see here is a raw, unedited image of what chromatic aberration looks like. And this was shot without filter using the Radian 61. As you can see, some of these brighter stars, there's this, you know, sort of bluish, purplish hue to it. Don't worry about the star shape. I had some star trails that night. Don't worry about it. But this is what, you know, unwanted chromatic aberration looks like. Now, what I did with the AT102EDL was I took 3 pictures at 3 seconds and then 10 seconds. And then I also switched between my general purpose light pollution filter, the Optolong L Pro, and no filter. And I decided that I'm going to go with, you know, the star Vega, just because I'm more familiar with it. And I waited until 5 a.m. in the morning because that's when Vega would show up. And I thought to myself, if I don't see chromatic aberrations at 10 seconds with Vega being as big and bright as it is, I'm not going to see chromatic aberration anywhere else. So let's take a look. By the way, these are all unedited, straight out of the camera. So let's take a look at 3 seconds with the Optolong L Pro filter. As you can tell, nice and no purple whatsoever. And then if we take a look at the 10 seconds, my stars, Vega looks a little bit bloated, but other than that, let me minimize this. Other than that, no chromatic aberration, no blue or purple to speak of with the filter. Now, if I were to go with the no filter at 3 seconds, I'm just going to pick any one of these. Now, this is the no filter. As for comparison, once again, Vega's in the middle and there's no chromatic aberration. At 10 seconds, no filter.
no chromatic aberration. So let me just put this up there again. So at 10 seconds, regardless if you are using no filter or with a filter, general purpose light pollution filter, I don't see any purple chromatic aberration. So I hope that was useful. Now back to the main video. Okay, well, as you can tell, the telescope is pointed really low in the night sky. That means that Leo's triplet is well below my neighbor's rooftop, and it is currently taking really close-up pictures of my neighbor's walls. It's also 4 a.m. in the morning, and now this is a very typical night for astrophotography where I stay up until 4 a.m. in the morning. It's just that I usually don't talk at 4 a.m. in the morning or try to come up with some sort of a summary. So I'm going to do my best to keep my thoughts together. What can I say about the Astro-Tech AT102EDL? Well, I think this refractor, it's one of the few refractors that I can truly recommend to be used year-round. You can use this refractor during the summer and the winter season to take really nice and beautiful pictures of larger nebulae, but also during the spring season, during the galaxy season, this is going to give you views to a lot of galaxies. Now, it's not going to give you views to all of the galaxies because they're really small. Even at 711 millimeters focal length, it's not enough to reach some of the galaxies, but this will keep you entertained during the galaxy season. So I think this is the one scope that if you can only have one telescope in your collection, this will be it because you can use it year round. Not to mention it's not too expensive. It's not gonna break your bank. It's got top of the line glass. It's got Astro-Tech's well-renowned build quality, and to top it all off, it's in a very light and convenient package. Honestly, for a 100 millimeter diameter refractor, this thing handles light. So I'm gonna wrap up and stop talking because it's 4 a.m. in the morning and I'm really tired. The more I talk, the less sense I'm gonna make. So yeah. English is hard right now. Okay, so I hope that you found this this video to be useful. Like I said, if you are somebody who's looking to have just one telescope to keep and use year-round, this is it. And with that being said, welcome to the galaxy season, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care, everyone. Bye. Oh, and clear skies. I hope we get some clear skies, because last spring was miserable for me. Yeah, I'm gonna stop talking and go to sleep. Good night, guys. Bye.